So this video you're about to watch is an interesting one because I actually recorded the first portion of it before this follow-up post from John Crew. And I actually add a little piece at the end addressing this post here. But I just want to give you the heads up about that. So what you're about to watch is me address the original issue, which is this post before we had the response or the follow-up from John Crew. So I do urge you to watch this video in its entirety. I think it's a good topic to talk about, and I think I touched on some decent topics and points. But at the end, please let me hear your thoughts. Let me hear you in the comment section below. But watch this video in its entirety. I think it's a good discussion, and I think it's good to talk about live like this. Well, I'm not live, but on YouTube. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. See you in a bit. All right, welcome back everyone to another video by yours truly, Digital Master. We have some developments. I've been really responding to a lot of these CIG clarifications lately. And this is yet another one. This one is a little bit more interesting. So, fair warning, this is a bit of a controversial issue. The purpose of my video, though, is just to discuss the issue and basically sit in a neutral seat, but explore both perspectives of this issue. I'm not going to lie, though, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think this is one that I think CIG might want back, but it's an interesting one. I definitely want to talk about this one, though, because this is a great topic, because I do think this is a valid concern that will be brought up in just a minute. But let's talk about this one. And I, again, solicit your thoughts in the comment section below. Before I begin, I have an organization, the Frontier Initiative Corporation. Please check the description below for all the links. We have a Discord, we have a website, and of course you can check out our RSI website. If you're interested in the casual as well as active player-friendly organization, we're starting from the ground up, and we need people. And so we're recruiting. So please take a look and see if this organization is up your alley, something that is a good fit for you. Let me know. You can always DM me on the the Spectrum site, or even in Discord. Definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions. All right, let's get right to the content here. Let's read this post by SMPR, which says, how possible, likely could we get some clarification from CIG if there is any to be given about the building module for the RSI Galaxy? Now, for those who don't know, last year, CitizenCon, there was a clear statement saying that the Galaxy, the RSI Galaxy, would get a base building module. And if I'm not mistaken, that base building module was supposed to be able to build a few different sizes of, or what was supposed to be able to facilitate a few different sizes of the building capabilities, basically. I think it was small, medium, and large, or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but either way, it was stated pretty clearly that this would be available for the RSI Galaxy. So he goes on to say, I, like many others, noticed its omission from the base building presentation, and surprise, surprise, the rumor mill is spun up, and there's angry nerds everywhere. I like that. Would CIG clarify here or in a Jared talk? Now, very fair question. I share the same question. Let's go ahead and take a look at the response, though, here. Okay. So this is where it gets very interesting. Hang on to your seats. So John Crew, greatest respect for John Crew. And again, I do want to urge, in situations like these, do not attack devs, please. Let's not do that. These are people, and they're just doing their jobs. Okay. Now, the marketing department of CIG, that's a different discussion. But of course, you still treat them as you always treat people right. You can share your disagreements, your frustrations without being evil and mean to people. Evil, I don't like that word, but mean and, cruel to people is not cool. So let's just please keep it civil while still expressing your frustration and your anger, because that's completely fair and in bounds. So let's read John Crew's response here. Hey, we planned to talk more about this at IAE, as that's generally where we give big updates across manufacturers. But a lot of people are discussing this very topic at the moment, so want to add some clarification in advance. There are no, bullet point number one, there are no current plans to have a base building module for the Galaxy. That doesn't mean there never will be, but there is nothing concepted, planned, or in the production schedule. The Starlancer BLD, which was announced this recent CitizenCon, will be the ship you can build large structures and when base building is available in game. Now, let's unpack this one because this is basically the biggest one, I think, for sure. So that first statement is where the foundation of the anger fuel is coming from. So there are no current plans to have a base building module for the Galaxy. So, and again, I'm going to explore this from both sides. I'm going to stay as neutral as possible, though I will tell you right up front, again, that I disagree with this. I think this was a bad move, and I think it could be due to some confusions here and there, but I just in general think this was a bad move, my personal opinion. But there are no current plans to have a base building module for the Galaxy, but I'm not a lazy person, I promise you, but I did not go track down that original poster presentation where they talked about the Galaxy, but I can tell you that I do recall seeing that clearly. It's a very vivid memory of that existing. So they did say that the Galaxy was going to have a base building module. Now, the reason why this is a problem, and this is the reason why I think it's a problem as well, is because, and I'm going to preface this with some things too. So just follow me, please. Stick with me on this one. The reason why this is a problem is because back then, now mind you, the Galaxy was not, the concept wasn't released at CitizenCon. I think it was before CitizenCon. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, by the way. Anyway, but this was before CitizenCon because it didn't release. It was, the concept was offered with a few base building modules that you can purchase. And I'm sorry, not base building. Sorry, let me backtrack. The Galaxy was the concept of the Galaxy was released with modules. I think it was like a refinery module. It was a medical module, and one more. Can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe a cargo. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there was not at that point in time a base building module mentioned or a base building module sold. So keep this in mind too. I do think it's important to keep that in mind. But at CitizenCon, they pitched the idea that they were going to offer a base building module in addition to the ones that came with its announcement for the Galaxy. So as you can imagine, right? So remember, CitizenCon is right before IAE. And when IAE comes around, people shift their fleets, new players or existing players alike, add new ships to their fleets. And because of the complexity of the pledge system, those are big decisions. Anything you do with your fleet in the RSI website is, to be fair, a big decision, because whatever actions you take on your fleet can potentially lock you out of an option with your fleet, right? And I won't get into all the details of that. I have some pledge guides on my channel that you can take a look at. And just by watching that video, you'll understand how complex the system is, which hasn't changed much to this day. So that video will still be relevant. But I will say, again, to stay on topic here, people make changes to their fleet at IAE. And you best believe there was a bunch of people who added the Galaxy to their fleet because of that announcement. Okay, so there you have a situation where you're at CitizenCon, no less, making a claim that you're going to add this module to this particular ship, and people were excited about that, myself included, to be honest, but I already had it, so that's why this stings a lot less for me, because I already was sold on the Galaxy with what it had before this. So that thing was in the fleet, in the hangars, well before this issue could even materialize. But for those who did not do that and made that decision based on what they saw in that CitizenCon, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. And I completely understand the frustration from that, because if I'm making a big change to my fleet, because remember, not everybody has 1,000 ships in their fleet. Some people have just what they want based on the gameplay loops they want to play in their fleet. You have to think about that. So how you manage your fleet is not necessarily how other people manage theirs, right? So be considerate of that when you think of this issue. Some people made a drastic change to their fleet to bring that ship into their fleet for the very reason of the fact that it was supposed to have base building in it or functionality to it, right? Come this CitizenCon or come this post, now this is a complete 180, it seems, to a degree, with a caveat, with a little caveat here, because he does mention that doesn't mean there will never be one concepted, planned, or in production schedule. But see, my issue with this is it completely ignores or omits the fact that this was presented at last CitizenCon as a planned module. So I don't know why the wording is what it is here. It seems to be completely unaware of or not cognizant of the fact that this was announced at the last CitizenCon. I do think that's an issue. But let's keep going. The Starlancer BLD will be the ship you can build. Now, the challenge with this statement is that if you, and see, this is the thing, right? Because you'll see so many complaints from the community about different things in Star Citizen or how the game is being managed or, developed, right? And in my opinion, a lot of those things can be unjustified sometimes. That's just my personal opinion. This is not one of them. But what the point I'm trying to make, though, is for some of the complaints that you hear that may or may not have, that may or may not be reasonable, depending on where you sit on that particular issue. This sentence only fuels the fire, and it only makes it more difficult to bring reason to some of the decisions that are being made here. But the Starlancer BLD will be the ship you can build large structures with when base building is available in game. The problem with adding this to the end of the last statement is the first sentence, you're saying that, or either he may have honestly forgot that they presented that at the last CitizenCon, or he's just, stepping over that. But in the next sentence, he's saying, no, but buy this ship if this is the gameplay loop you want to play. Or at least that's what people are taking from it. And listen, I will defend where it makes sense, because I consider myself to be a fair person. So I will sit in the middle, and I will sit in both seats of a issue, and I would try to understand the perspective, and I would try to understand the logic behind those arguments, right? And this one, I'm having a very difficult time with this first bullet point to understand the CIG side of it, because you announced this at last CitizenCon and people made decisions based on that. But then you're going to add insult to injury, basically, and say the Starlancer BLD would be the ship you can use. That's a little tough pill to swallow there, because now you want me to pivot and buy this ship now. For now, I'm wondering, are you going to pivot again? Because you already, just nullified what was said last year. So this is where the distrust comes from some of the community with what is being said to them from CIG. And this is hard to defend. I'm going to tell you that right now. In fact, I cannot defend that. There's a lot of things I can defend, because it is an alpha. The game is an alpha. There will be changes. Development is ever flowing, and there will always be changes during development. Like, for example, the Corsair issue, I am completely on the side of CIG for that one, because they never promised you that what the stats were of that ship from the start were going to be what it was when the game goes through development. Like, in my opinion, the community should know that. That's just my opinion. Just don't, right? But this one, I can't defend this one. This one is tough. But I will take the moment at the end of this and sit in both seats and try my best to understand what could have happened here. But anyway, let's read the second bullet point here. The only confirmed module in addition to the ones on the pledge store is the manufacturing module. The general rule of thumb for all things vehicle is unless it's on the pledge store or available in game, treated as speculative. Now, this is another bullet point that the community is torn on. And it's funny because I'm not even sure torn is the right word. I think most people do not like this post or do not like what was said in this post. But this bullet point is also a bit egregious to me because, okay, so it says the only confirmed module in addition to the ones on the pledge store is the manufacturing module. Is the second part though. The general rule of thumb for all things vehicle is unless it's on the pledge store or available in game, treat it as speculative. Now, devil's advocate here. He's right. He's absolutely right from a factual and general standpoint. He's right. If you're going to engage in the pledge store activities, I will say, if it's, in fact, I'll take this even further. If it's in the pledge store, treat it as speculative, right? Anything can change. Any ship that you pledge for can fundamentally change. And within the guidelines, in a sense, or within the realm of reason, because they tell you when you pledge for a ship, you get a clear indication with the disclaimer that they give you that things can and will change as far as what that ship is, anything about it. Now, my rule of thumb is this, and I'm going to share this. I'm going to keep going, right? When you buy a ship from the pledge store, pledge based on what its function is supposed to be. If it's a combat fighter, a small size fighter like a anvil arrow, then it's going to excel at that task. Some way or another, it's going to excel at that. Now, when we start to talk about it, how it stacks up against similar ships in that small fighter category, that will be up in the air. So if you get married to that arrow because at the time that it's released, it's OP or it's the meta ship, that's a bad idea in my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Just know though that arrow, the idea is, what I feel you can put more trust in basically, is that ship will function as an effective small fighter, period. That's, in my opinion, what you pledge for. For example, if you're going to pledge for the Carrack, it's a I think it's capital, is a capital or subcapital exploration ship that has a lot of capabilities to it. So what do I take from that? If I like the general design of the ship, I'm going to pledge because I want to do exploration and I think that ship is going to fit my playstyle, my organization, or what have you, right? And the basic idea of the ship, the pitch of the ship, is what I'm into, right? But if I start looking at stats, if I start looking at the weapon sizes, if I start looking at all those things, that's where you start to get into muddy ground, because the second CIG changes something, yes, I'm talking to you Corsair owners, you're up in arms. And I get it. You sort of got a little bit too married to everything you see with that ship. And the thing is, a lot of it is in flux, and it will be until we get to 1.0. Now, if CIG start doing these grand changes after 1.0, now I'm starting to raise an eyebrow, right? Because now we're at a proper release of the game and you're making drastic changes. Though I do think some changes will continue to happen, right? Because the game has to be balanced. So there will be balancing throughout, period, after release as well. But grand changes is where I'll start to be like, okay, that's a little sketchy. Let's make sure that we kind of nail down some concrete things about these ships by the time we reach 1.0. That's my personal hope and request to CIG basically. But yeah, this is a tough pill to swallow, even though I do agree with the statement. The general rule of thumb for all the vehicles is unless it's on the pledge store or available in game, treat it as speculative. And I guess the point he's getting to is the module. So because the module simply doesn't exist, he's saying, just understand that it may or may not. Even if we say it's coming, understand that plan can change. That is fair. That is absolutely fair. But then the way it was handled is where I have a personal problem, right? Which is the bullet point one. So yeah, I do find the second, like this statement, a little troublesome, but I do still agree with it because he is absolutely right. As difficult as that is to digest, I'll say. All right, let's read bullet point three. The Perseus is the next RSI capital ship in production instead of the Galaxy, purely down to the greater percentage of shared assets with Polaris. And so that one is easy. I'm not even gonna address too much about that because any of us who've been here for a long time, we've seen this happen. In fact, it happened with the Polaris, where it was in development and then they snatched it right out. Where everybody who has a Polaris, myself included, one of my most anticipated ships, I was disappointed, but I understood because I knew that could happen. In my mind, I already knew this is a possibility just because it's in development, and it happened to the Banu Merchantman as well. But for understandable reasons, like they explained it too, like they gave reasons, and it's understandable. Things happen, man. Things happen. You got to kind of look at it as your life, even though it is a company, but companies suffer or go through the same things like that, where you have goals, you have plans, and you even have a plan, right, and a schedule and how you're going to reach that goal. But then things happen that sometimes you just were unable to anticipate. And as a result, you have to pivot. And so that happens. It happens. So I understand that. Third bullet point, just, it is what it is. So that's basically it. But the first bullet point is my issue. Like, I got a problem with that one in its entirety. But the second bullet point, I understand, but it's a hard pill to swallow after that first bullet point. I think that's a hard pill to swallow. But I even take that second bullet point that step further. Like, even if it is in the store, man, just at this point, just wait till it's in your hands. Wait till it's wait till we get to 1.0, man. That's when I start to get married to ships. Like, I have daily drivers now, but I tell you this, once 1.0 drops, I'm going to reevaluate my fleet based on where things have landed. And then at that point, I'll know what is my best ship, what is my favorite ship, what is my go-to, what is my ultimate favorite. That's when I'll settle on things like that. But right now, it's too volatile. It's like a volatile investment. It's like you just ride the wave, as crazy as that wave is, until we get to, like, less troubled water. Okay, so that's my thought on it. But again, sitting in the seat of both parties, again, if I'm sitting in the seat of CIG, I still do not understand bullet point one, outside of the fact that things can change, and maybe they jumped the gun too fast with their announcement at CitizenCon last year. That is fair. That is totally fair. But I do think in a situation like that, you need to address it head on. Say, listen, we jumped the gun on this one. We chose to backtrack on this. And I would then start to tell everyone how we plan to avoid doing that same thing in the future. Like, I work in business, and I sort of touch things like that, where you have to handle different issues that your end user is experiencing. And the idea is that you want to limit that pain, that painful experience that they might have either using your product or working with your product or understanding your product, right? So if there's a problem that you caused, own it, and then communicate your plan on how you're going to help avoid that if it's something that you control, or help them avoid that going forward. That's the way you approach that thing. So that's what I would have liked to have heard. I'll be honest with you. In addition, the second bullet point, I don't know. I just think there's more to be said on that to clear it up. Like, I think, if anything, even though it's in the disclaimer, I think in their communications, I would be louder about it. I think they do pretty good. Even Jared, he's really good about letting the community know, look, if we're not talking about it, it's probably not, you know what I mean? Like, little stuff like that. Jared goes a long way to do that. And I think that should be appreciated by the community. When we do get it from CIG, let them know it's appreciated. just as much as we let them know how much we don't appreciate the things that we don't like, right? Like this, like that first bullet point, man, that one hit me a little bit hard. Again, I sit in a different seat because I got the Galaxy for a very different reason. So it's not the biggest issue for me, but since I sat in the seat of CIG, you know, in that seat, I understand some portions of this and understand how this can happen, but I also think there's a better way to address it. But let me sit in the seat of the end user here, or let me give you a specific, and I sort of did already, a specific Star Citizen consumer who watched last CitizenCon, saw that announcement, is super excited about base building. Maybe they're a small to medium-sized organization or even a single player, right, who occasionally plays with friends. And let's say, you know, they're not Legatus or they're not Concierge, and they just basically want to have a small set of ships just to engage in the content that they want to engage in. They listened to CitizenCon last year. They got excited about the Galaxy. IAE came around a month later and they dove headfirst into buying and pledging for that Galaxy. Now, without even considering whatever challenges they may or may not have had acquiring that ship, the fact that that was what led them to it, and then they come here a year later completely excited, because there were discussions about the Galaxy leading up to this CitizenCon, by the way, which I was a part of. They get to CitizenCon, see no mention of it, so probably a little bummed, and then they get this post. That is the literal definition of a gasoline fire. It's basically out of control at this point. But nonetheless, again, playing devil's advocate, playing on both sides, you know, I can understand how it happened, but I think there's a better way that CIG could have addressed this, for sure. Or handled it starting way back last year. Just not saying things that you're not at least 70 to 90% confident that is going to be, right? Especially when you know how the community is. Because the community, like I said, I think most issues are overblown. I think most complaints from the community are reasonable to a degree, but largely unreasonable. But there's a few where I completely sympathize with the community. And this is one of them. I don't want to say unfortunately, but this is one of them. CIG, I hope that you learn from this. I hope that, you know, you take an action on that, but you still have my support. I'm still here, but I do ask that, you know, you fix stuff like that, because that's a painful experience for an end user, for your customer. And I get it. It happens though. It happens. But, you know, from a consumer standpoint, that's a bad experience. So I want to know what your thoughts are about this. I know this is a contentious topic, or a very tough one. Again, I don't do drama, so please keep the comments light. Please keep them to the point, and with full respect for both the developers of CIG as well as myself and everyone else in that comment section. We can have conversations like this in a healthy way. As angry as you might be, you can still communicate effectively. So let's please do that. Keep it civil, but share your thoughts. I would love to hear what you have to say. And a few people did say it, because I put a post on my YouTube about this, and a few people chimed in. One person who was very upset about it, and I just understood. I understand, and it's okay to be upset. So let me know your thoughts. I don't usually do stuff like this, but again, I'm not bringing negativity, and I'm not bringing, you know, toxicity here. It's just discussing the issue, and I hope that we can do that in a healthy way. So thanks for stopping by. Yeah, actually, one more thing. I almost forgot to add this, so I added it at the end. But what I like to do as well at the end is sort of, because I sort of said some things to CIG with all due respect and, you know, love and appreciation. But I also want to say this to the community, because with situations like this, right, I sort of said, you know, CIG, please do better, learn from this, et cetera, et cetera. So my message to the community on this one is a little interesting, because I think, like I mentioned before, like a lot of things I don't agree with the complaints from the community, the ones that I think are unreasonable, right? But and so my feedback for those are typically in line with, okay, it's alpha, and basically what I said earlier about like how I view purchase or pledging for ships. Of course, you don't have to adopt that. It's just the way I'm just sharing the way that I do it, which has worked for me. And honestly, I know it's worked for other people too, who also say that they do the same thing. Um, but my message to you for this one is, un- uh, unfortunately, there was nothing you could do to avoid this. If you fell victim to this, and I say victim carefully, but yeah, if you fell victim to this, there is really nothing you could have done better to avoid this, because you took the information provided at CitizenCon to make what would normally be considered an educated decision on whether to pick up the Galaxy or not, right? Um, but I will say, and this is a tough thing, because again, I don't think this is an action plan that is necessarily super reasonable. Because how can I tell you in that situation not to pledge for the Galaxy because you just don't know what they're going to do, even though that is exactly what I'm going to say. I can understand if that's not acceptable for many of you. So I'll just say, man, if you are passionate about the project and Star Citizen, I say, just that's a tough one, man. I don't even know what to tell you. For this one, specifically, obviously continue to make educated decisions based on what we know about the project and the fact that nothing is written in stone until we get to 1.0 and beyond, basically. And even then, you may want to take everything with a grain of salt. But definitely let that be the foundation of your approach, in my opinion, to anything you pledge for in Star Citizen. Be very careful. Take as much information about what you're about to jump into as you possibly can before you dive in, because at the end of the day, depending on why you're going for it matters. Like, okay, maybe that is my guidance to you, and this is probably better to say. No matter what you pledge for, it matters why you're pledging for it. That's the key, right? If you're pledging for a ship based on the idea of the ship, I don't think you can really go wrong there, personally. But if you're pledging for the ship because it's meta currently, bad idea. If you're pledging for the ship because it has size 3 repeaters or guns or weapon mounts, probably a bad idea. If you're pledging because it has a capital size the scanner radar, I should say, probably a bad idea, right? Because those things are probably most likely to change. And if that's the reason you fell in love with the ship, then I'll let it sit. I mean, you can pledge it, right? Because you can always turn it into credits. So it's not like you're completely blocked from doing it, or that it's completely unreasonable to pledge for some of those reasons, as long as you understand what can happen. Because I think a lot of the vitriol that we see in the community when things like this happen comes down to, outside of this issue, by the way, if you have vitriol for this, first of all, I don't think you should ever resort to insults and disrespect. Like, that's just my personal stance on that sort of thing. I'll never side with you with that. I'll never. If you decide that, okay, lashing out at people, being negative and toxic is your response and it's validated, I disagree with that completely. But you being frustrated, angry, and taking an action like not pledging again, that's fair, man. That's fair game, right? In my opinion, because that's the most effective thing anyway. If you really dislike the practices, then opt out. That's the loudest thing you can do. But I do suggest, and like maybe before doing something like that, communicate to CIG, but just be human and understand that they are too. Communicate in a healthy way, man. I can't preach that enough. And I'm going to say that. I'm sorry if that sounds cheesy to you, but there's enough people out there that will facilitate vitriol. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that says, hey, I understand you, but let's make sure we have a right approach. Let's take this in a healthy way. Let's respond in a healthy way. Let's be healthy people, right? That's me. That's all I had to say. But this one is tough for you. If you're in this boat who are, I'm going to say, victim of this decision or of this issue, then I think it's a tough situation. And I do sympathize with you. And I just urge you to, just continue to practice a good vetting before you jump into pledging anything going forward. And just make sure that, I don't know, man. I don't know. This one is tough. But either way, again, I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so as I was compiling this video, John Crew created another follow-up post, and I'm so glad at the timing of this because this really will highlight another point that I'm going to make in a second. But kudos to John Crew, kudos to the CIG team, um, and also for the quick response to this. To me, this is a step forward. Like compared to some of the previous, or the few previous, in my opinion, few previous gaffes that they've made, this is a very quick response and addressing of the issue. I want to definitely send kudos up for that. But let's read it real quick. So, hi everyone, or hey everyone. I realized my previous comments may have given the wrong impression and I spoke too soon on the topic. That is so fair. I've since regrouped with the larger teams to ensure we're all fully aligned on the Galaxy's future. To clarify, while there's no base building module currently in active development for the Galaxy, we're fully committed to enabling a large base building drone module for it down the line. That is completely what I would, that is the most I could have hoped for in response to this. Just retract that, right? Just fix it, guys. And they fixed it. So this is great. The Galaxy won't be the first ship for building large scale structures when base building launches, but will come soon after, and its potential for that role is very much intact. My earlier comment about when things are speculative was incorrect. John Crew, you have so much respect for me for coming back and fixing this. We want to make sure that when we walk on stage during ISC or in any presentation, you can walk away feeling confident in the information we share. That's exactly what I was talking about. We'll share more information on this module as it becomes available. Thanks all for the feedback, and I'll be monitoring threads closely if you have any more questions. Now, see, this is where you have to give credit where it's due, right? Like I said, mistakes happen. Mistakes happen, sometimes big mistakes, right? Even though it's a corporation, you treat people like people. People make up corporations, and therefore people make mistakes, right? This is a mistake. And they came back and they addressed it and they fixed it. You have to give respect for that. Give respect for that. Now, yes, it's because of your voice and sharing your opinion, sharing your frustration. But I promise you, if everyone would have done that in a very respectful way, the same result would have came about. You don't have to be an a-hole to get results. And I know from personal experience. So nonetheless, this is a great way to wrap up this video, to say, not that they heard what I had to say because the video is not even out yet, but you'll hear, like you've heard, if you got this far in the video, you've heard my recommendation to them. It's like they already knew, and they're like, okay, let's just fix this, and they fixed it. This is a fix, in my opinion. No, we're not getting it soon, of course, but that was never promised anyway, right? But they did fix it. We're getting that base building module on the Galaxy in the future. So that's what we wanted to hear. So if you did purchase or pledge for the Galaxy, you're validated again in having that. So thanks, CIG, for fixing the issue. I think this is big on you to do that, right? Mistakes happen. And anybody who doesn't see the human element, let me know what your thoughts are now that we have this full circle solution, basically. But yeah, thanks, guys, for taking some time to listen to me talk about this topic. Now it's my turn to listen to you and read your comments. So thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.